Hello everyone, I'm Soma Mazumdar.
And I'm Orod Semsarzadeh, and welcome to Kanban Lab podcast. In each episode, we'll pick a common question and dive into a different aspect of Kanban, exploring its principles, practices, and applications, and answering that question.
Our goal in this podcast is to demystify Kanban and help listeners understand how it can benefit their teams and organizations through addressing the common misconceptions, clarifying concepts, and answering questions about Kanban.
Good morning, Soma. How are you?
Hey, morning, Orod. I'm good. How are you doing? How is Melbourne today?
I'm very good. Today it's actually quite windy and rainy. How is the weather in Sydney?
Well, it's sunny, but at the same time cold. So yes, like same, I would say. Nothing
Yeah,
changed much since last time we spoke.
yeah, we're getting closer to winter.
We are like the winter is already here. What are you
Oh,
talking
are we
about?
in the
It's
winter already? Oh, okay.
yes, we are.
All right. So, what do you heard recently about Kanban that surprised you, Soma? Is there anything
Um,
interesting to share with us?
yes, actually there is, and this is not very common. What I heard recently. So I went to a meeting where someone said that, like it's the delivery teams who needs to deliver fast,
Mm-hmm.
and they are really, really not worried about that the demand, like how demand is getting into the delivery team. So no one is
Mm-hmm.
looking at optimizing that. All they want the delivery team to just deliver fast. So
Yeah.
there's no balance between demand versus capability.
Mm. So basically, everything go to the delivery team and ask them to get it done without doing enough discovery on the work, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah?
Wait, yeah. So you are touching on the topic of upstream Kanban, aren't you? You know what? I have a surprise
Yeah.
for you today, Aurora.
You
So
have
we
surprise for
have,
me.
yes, for you and for also for our audience, because we have a very special guest, someone who actually taught me the meaning of upstream Kanban in a very, very simple way. So I
Mm-hmm.
learned this when I was going through my own AKT journey. And
Yeah.
I watched this video and reached out to this person who is such a genuine and simple, like kind-hearted person who responded to my messages, explaining more about Upstream Kanban. And you know what? We got him today on this call
Lovely.
to talk
Perfect.
about Upstream Kanban. So I'm gonna hand over to this person, Andre, to introduce himself because I won't be able to do justice to that. Andre, welcome to our podcast.
Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. My pleasure to stay here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We
It's a
are loving this.
pleasure. Who is better than you to talk about upstream Kanban, Andre?
I think there's a lot of people that is very interested in upstream Canada, but I'm trying to do my best here. And kudos for Patrick Stayert, the guy
Yeah.
that
Mm,
um, shared the upstream essential upstream Kanban, the
Mm.
ebook. And by the way, you can download it for free on Kanban University website.
Yeah.
So I'm here. I studied a lot about his job, and I use Upstream Kanban in my work as well.
Yeah.
So let's
mm,
try to explain something.
So
yes.
before we start talking about upstream Kanban, so how is the weather? So basically, where you at the moment, and how is the weather?
I live in Maryland, in America, United States.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So here, actually, the weather today is kind of weird because did you see the news about the fires in Canada?
Oh,
That lot of
wow.
No.
fires
What
and a lot
happened?
of smokes. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Mm.
Basically, we have some smoke coming from Canada to United States,
Ah, okay.
Oh.
and the air quality is very low at the moment here, but hopefully we will get better soon.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay. Because we also have bushfiring in Australia in summer. It's very common.
Yeah.
So hopefully everything will be fine. And by the way, speaking of Patrick, I've met him when I was in India in December for Kanban India, and we had really good chat. He's a very nice person, and I just wanted to use this opportunity to say hi to him, and hopefully we have him someday in our
Yes,
podcast as well.
definitely.
All right, Andre, can you tell us a little bit about Upstream Kanban?
Hmm.
Well, when we talk about Kanban and the delivery teams, is when we get the job done, right?
Hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but
Hmm.
a lot of things happen before you start a job like coding, developing, or anything else. So,
Hmm.
upstream is what happened before what we call the commitment point. What
Mm-hmm.
is the commitment point? When you have like your service or your delivery, the commitment point is when I use it to say when you get married with the demand.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start doing something and you know what we always talk in Kanban, stop starting, start
Mm-hmm.
finishing, limit
Hmm.
whip. So this is what is happening when you are delivering. The upstream is if you have a board, is like the left part of your board before the commitment point. So
Mm-hmm.
is where you have ideas, you have options, you have discovery.
Hmm.
Depends, of course, where you work. You have the user experience job or something like that. I use it to say it's the part that you deal with options because
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
since you committed to the work is not an option anymore. So this is the
Hmm.
upstream Kanban.
Okay, and that's
Yeah.
why you call it married with what did you call it? Marriage with
The demand
demand?
or
Demand.
Yeah,
the work
yeah,
Yeah.
the work item. The commitment point is when
yeah.
you get married with the work
That's
item.
Yeah.
right. Because
In
when
upstream, I'm sorry. In upstream, you are dating the work item.
that's
So,
right.
Ah,
and
that's a really, really good analogy,
Yeah.
I believe.
You know what I normally use? I normally tell people that before you sign a contract and you buy a house, you can do whatever you want to do. You can ask, people to come for pest inspection. You can ask a plumber to come and see if there is anywhere is leaking or whatever. But when you
Yeah.
sign a contract, it's your house, then it's your problem. You can't sell it just easily. You need to fix whatever it's there. So before
Yeah.
signing a contract, make sure you've done enough,
Yeah.
analysis.
Analysis and also feasibility, like if you can
Mm,
pay the mortgage. But on that, Andre, what based on your experience working in different industries and different countries, how important is upstream Kanban?
hmm
yeah, the upstream Kanban is something that will improve your flow and create a more sustainable flow,
hmm
efficient flow, effective flow. Because since you work only in the delivery, you pretty much will have a product owner or a product manager, and
Mm.
all the things you start working with the team is something that is in his computer or in his spreadsheet, something that is not visible for the team.
Yes.
Since
Yes.
you have the upstream, you can have this in a board and you have the columns in an upstream. Yeah,
Mm.
the work will become more visible and you will understand what happened since you have an idea
hmm
to
Mm.
deliver this for your customer. The point is this: the upstream starts when you have an idea, when you
hmm
need
Mm.
an analysis or something before you decide that this is the right thing to do. What I always say that your capacity to have ideas,
Mm.
it's bigger and bigger and bigger than your capacity to convert these ideas in software if you're talking about software or
Mm.
something else. So it's
hmm
important to see the upstream like you have a funnel with filters. So
Yeah.
you are
Mm.
taking decision what I discard, what I'm gonna do, what's a good idea, what's a bad idea before you start the work.
Okay.
Mm.
So make sure to marry the right person, basically.
Perfect, perfect.
So
Yeah.
it might
Or
be a
buy
bit
the rice in the house.
controversial.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
yeah, but it might be a bit controversial. So you are basically saying you should date as many people as you could before marrying the right person, right?
No, sometimes you will marry the first people you date. Why not? But it's important to have decisions in upstream and understand. And I always say to people that technical refinement is part of the upstream as well. So you can understand what you're going to do and deliver faster.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Andre, you mentioned about in upstream, we look at the idea and make sure that we're going to commit to the right option or right idea that we actually want to deliver. So, w I have two questions. What happens if we don't do upstream and we commit as soon as possible and say, "Yep, we're gonna do this"? What will happen? And then I'll ask
Some
you the second question later.
sometimes depends of the work item. You don't need an upstream. It's like an explicit policy that you can have. For instance, if you are fixing a bug in production, you
Mm.
don't need to look at this bug and see if it makes sense to do the things that you need to do. Of course, if you have a bug in production, you can just set in downstream and develop that.
Mm.
But when you I'm sorry. I need to get a cut on that. What was your original question?
So I said, what problem we want to solve by having
Oh, okay.
upstream?
Mm.
Imagine that you are a pizza place
Yes?
Mm.
and people call to your pizza place and say, I want a pizza with pepperoni, salmon, and
Mm-hmm.
broccoli. And
Mm.
you have no idea if it's possible to create a pizza with pepperoni, salmon, and broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that we will solve in upstream is that you will commit it to work that you can do. So
Mm-hmm.
if you
Mm.
don't have the upstream, sometimes you will commit it with something that you are unable to deliver, or
Mm.
worst, you will deliver the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
the upstream is important to make sure that you're delivering the right thing at the right time.
Okay. Okay.
Wow. Mm.
So, and I have another question because I think, Soma, you mentioned in upstream we can date as much as we
Possible.
can.
Yeah.
Um, But in Kanban, so basically what we want is to make sure that we always have enough work and not have too much work. So do we also need to limit the number of work in upstream, or we can say, or no, we going to analyze 200 tickets or 200 ideas at the same time?
It's always a good thing to limit the work in progress in upstream as well, for the same
Hmm.
reason that in downstream. So we will not have a lot of work to do, and you can focus in a small amount of work. But the point in upstream, and for me, the most important thing is not to set a maximum WIP limit, is
Hmm.
set a minimum WIP limit. And
Hmm.
why? Since you are discovering, since you are having ideas, since you are taking a look in the work items, and you will discard a lot of them,
Hmm.
you
Mm.
need to have a pool of ideas that you can commit at some point.
Hmm.
So if you have a minimum work in progress in upstream, you always keep on track something that can go to the next phase of your work.
Hmm.
And since your delivery team raise the hands and say, okay, we can do something else, you have something that is prepared
Mm.
to the downstream. The
Yeah.
point
Mm.
is, I never know any company that the team working in downstream raising the hand and said, we want more work, and they said, we don't have work to give you now, just wait a
Yeah.
little bit. Of course
Yeah.
they will pull the work, and
Mm.
work that is not prepared for that enough,
Yes.
work
Yeah.
that is not in definition of ready.
That's
So
right.
if you have the upstream, a pool of ideas in upstream, you have the ability to push more work and keep your flow.
Okay. And also make sure that we have enough ready work for delivery team.
Yeah.
Perfect, perfect.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Um, okay, Soma, do you have any question?
I
Otherwise, I have
do.
another things.
Well,
Yes.
you can take your turn
No, no,
first,
no,
and
you
then
go, you
I
go.
have, yes, I have a question. So it's based on the recent changes that has been done on the customer lead time by Kanban University. So now the customer lead time starts before the first commitment point. It actually starts from the options. Have you heard about it, guys?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree with it because I believe that it is very important to understand how much time your options are taking, like the discovery, the analysis, the feasibility test are taking, because that's all about optimizing upstream. And as you mentioned earlier, upstream, downstream, both is part of the flow, how fast we can deliver anything to our customer. So, what is your take on it, Andre? What are your thoughts on that, the customer lead time starting from the options?
Okay, so I think makes sense. The customer lead time starts in options, but I use it to say is at the moment that you touch your customer heart. So
Mm,
when our customers say, okay, now they committed to the work that we talked about.
mm,
Sometimes, and for instance, if you have a team
mm,
that your customer call in customer service and open a ticket. If
mm.
you work in an airline, for instance,
Yeah.
so since your customer called to the airline and said, I need a refund for a ticket that was my flight was delayed or something like
Mm,
that. At that point that your customer call, his heart was like, okay, I'm waiting for something for an answer from the company. So
mm,
I
mm.
think the lead time start at that moment in this
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
But at some point when we are delivering software, the customer call or send an email or something, but it's like just an idea about a new feature. So we
Mm,
can't start like at that point because we need to talk with that customer. We need to understand what is the reason we are developing something. So I use it to say at this case, I started the lead time when we have a suspect what we need. So
mm,
when the customer say, okay, they are writing their requirements, they are having something like a technical analysis about that. So that was the point that the customer understand that we are dealing with
mm,
the thing that we want to have as a feature. So for me, it depends.
Mm.
mm.
When in your environment, you, as I said, touch the heart of your customer that
Yeah.
it's saying, we are looking what we are talking about.
Oh,
Mm.
I love this analogy. And also, it makes so much of sense because sometimes understanding the feasibility of a demand is very important before even the customer knows that, okay, they want it. So, like the software example that you have given really, really makes sense because sometimes, we will get all kind of requirement, but when we go to integrate that with our existing platform, that might not be possible.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
in those cases, those options will be discarded. So starting the customer lead time, like the ticker from that time doesn't make sense because we don't know if it is a valid demand. So yes, I would say that, okay, I got my answer. And thank you for that, Andre. So back to you, Orod.
Yeah. So just to make sure, we all, at least I'm clear.
Mm,
So, Andre, what you said is that the customer lead time can start before the commitment point, but not necessarily as soon as customer raise the request.
mm,
Perfect, perfect.
mm,
Yes,
mm.
this is what I thought about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So, what do you think about because in lots of organizations, especially large organization, um, they normally have a dedicated team for discovery, right? So they have product owner, they have
business analysts, they might have some sort of architect, those kind of people, right? Which spend most of their time on discovery and upstream Kanban. So what do you think about getting the delivery team involved in upstream Kanban? Do you think this is a must and must happen, or no, we must have a separate dedicated team for, upstream and a dedicated team for downstream?
I think for me, when I involved the technical team in the upstream was a game changer.
Mm,
Not exactly all the teams, sometimes only the leader or the technical leader or architects, because we have in upstream, we need to discuss about how the
mm-hmm.
system is going to work and in a technical way, what makes sense before we commit it, as we talked a couple minutes.
Yeah,
So for me, of course, you will have more business people in upstream and more development people in downstream. But of course, if you have the service, the services, the upstream and the downstream together, and
yeah,
Kanban is about services, right?
that's right.
So if you have people working in the service, I think is a good idea. And for me, was a game changer.
Mm. And also, it's always good to look at this option from different angles. So,
Mm.
from customer point of view, from business point of view, from technical point of
Mm.
view, to analyze this problem and see how, as you said, how we want this system behave.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and I have dozens of examples about that, but sometimes I work with a team that works in an accountant system.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
These people knows more about accountant systems and taxes and everything than the
Mm-hmm.
accountants because they are working for 20 years in that system.
Yeah.
So everybody can talk about that and break the big stories in small stories and get prepared for the downstream. So that makes sense. Get people involved.
Mm.
Mm.
And maybe back to one of the Kanban principle, manage the work, not
Not the
worker.
worker, yes.
And
Exactly.
let worker to decide what is the best way to deal with the work.
Also, this is a very good example of customer centricity and business agility, if you look at it in that way, because it is all about delivering the best service to our customer, keeping them in the heart of everything, and business agility, right? Like getting different perspectives to solve a problem. So,
Hmm. That's good. All right. So if we want to summarize what we discussed, Andre, and what will be basically the takeaway from this episode?
Okay, and something I summarized the upstream Kanban in a picture called Upstream Kanban picture. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are listening this episode, you can search Upstream Kanban picture, Andre Suman, my name, or
Yeah.
take a look at andresuman.com. I have a
Mm-hmm.
blog post where I have the picture that I explain upstream Kanban. And what I'm going to summarize here is you need to take a look in your flow before you're committed to work. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what upstream is. And since there's a lot of job that is done before the development team take a look at the work. So you can map your upstream flow. You can take a look in what is makes sense in a technical way. You have options. You need to understand the efficiency of your flow, but you need to get the right things to get done. So the
Mm-hmm.
upstream is where you generate value, making the right choices in
mm,
everything that your customer is talking about and having ideas.
wow,
Lovely. I'll
that's
make sure
amazing.
to add the link at the bottom of this podcast. So if anyone wants to look at the map that Andre said, they can easily find it.
I also would like to add something in the takeaway. So it is again very important that flow is not only about delivery teams or downstream, it is
Mm-hmm.
about end-to-end flow. Whenever we talk about flow in Kanban, it's about end-to-end, which includes upstream or shaping demand. So it is as important as shaping the delivery teams or capability. So please pay attention to that whenever, like you have an organization, that how the demands are getting shaped before it reaches the commitment point to the delivery teams.
And make sure to marry the right person.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
important.
And one
Also,
last tip.
yeah, yeah.
Since you have your board with the ready to do
Mm.
to production, think about to have a board starting with ideas to ready for replenishment or ready to start. This is
Yeah,
your upstream. So you need to fill your board with the right columns there and take a
Mm.
look in your flow in upstream.
That's
lovely.
really nice.
All right. Thanks, Andre. It was really great. It was a pleasure to have you in this episode. I personally learned a lot. It was
Me
an
too.
enjoyable chat.
Yeah, it was. And thank you again, Andre. I think I keep learning from you. So, like, it is a pleasure, absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. It was my first podcast in English.
Yay!
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.